Hi, everyone. I feel so privileged to read with you. Are you enjoying The Night of the Spadefoot Toad? Let's review Chapter 9 quickly so we can get started with continuing the story. Don't forget, we are practicing good reading strategies and techniques to help us understand and analyze the text as we enjoy this lection. Our learning targets are: we will compare and contrast two or more settings in a story, drawing on specific details in the text. We will do this by identifying how the characters are influenced by the setting, and we will be successful by completing a Venn diagram. We're also going to be working on determining the theme of a story from the details in the text, including how characters respond to challenges. Don't forget, the theme is overall the whole book, so that's why we keep working on this. Does it still align with what we thought? Adjusting to new places, making new friends. Let's see how we're going to do this. We're going to identify how characters respond to challenges, and we are going to discuss how those responses support the theme of the story. This is the Venn diagram we will be completing today. You will notice I have documented or written the settings, classroom, and woods. As we read, keep in mind Ben's feelings and reactions in the two different settings. Today, we are going to read Chapter 10. We will read to see how the author uses key ideas and details to describe the characters in the setting. As we read, think about how you could use specific details in your stories to identify characters and settings. So what happened in Chapter 9? First of all, what did Mrs. Tibbets ask Ben when she called? Yes, she asked him about the snake cage. Do we know she suspected him? Not really, but she is concerned because the snakes are very dangerous, and this is not their natural habitat up in Massachusetts. Think about that. We've talked about the habitat. And why Ben was really familiar with the rattlesnakes? It was because of where he lived in the Sonoran Desert, right? And Massachusetts is not a desert. Do you remember talking about that? Let's go on. We also recognized Ben was not honest. Why do you think Ben was not honest? Why do you think he didn't tell her what happened? I always think, tell the truth, and in the long run, you may be in trouble, but it would be worse if you don't tell the truth, because eventually you will be found out. So, do you think he will eventually get caught? We also found out that Ryan has not given up trying to be Ben's friend. In Chapter 9, how did he demonstrate he wanted to be Ben's friend? What did Ben do? How did he react to Ryan? That's right. Ryan knew Ben was interested in the Spadefoot toads and brought Ben books about amphibians and reptiles. These didn't seem to be books Ryan was necessarily interested in, but he knew Ben was. His actions showed he was considering Ben's interests. Let's continue reading now. See what happens. When Ben walks into science class the next day, 4 or 5 kids are crowded around Mrs. Tibbets' desk. He edges closer to see what they're gaping at. A large glass jar with 3 frogs partially hidden in the mud and grass at the bottom. Peepers, he says. Nuh-uh, Frankie says, grabbing for the jar. It's frogs. Here, I'll shake them up so you can see them better. Ben starts to grab for the jar before the frogs get hurt. Just then, Mrs. Tibbets walks into the room and everybody takes a step back except for Frankie, who's got the jar in his hands. Put it down, Frankie, Mrs. Tibbets says calmly. Frankie rolls his eyes and puts the jar back on the desk. Everybody in your seats, the teacher says. You all have a chance to look at our friends here. The students straggle back to their desks. When the room is quiet, Mrs. Tibbets holds up the jar and turns it around slowly. These little guys are hard to find, but now is a good time to catch them. You caught them yourself? Frankie asks. Of course. Cool, says Ryan. Can I see one? You can see them from there. I'm not letting them out today. There are pleads and groans, but Mrs. Tibbets ignores them. Has anyone ever seen one outside? Several kids shake their heads. You may not have seen them, but I'll bet some of you have heard them, Mrs. Tibbetts says. She looks at Ben. How about you, Ben? Yeah, he says, not looking her in the eye. They're spring peepers. I've heard them behind my house. Can you make their sound for us? Mrs. Tibbetts asks. Ben hesitates. I wonder why he hesitates. Come on, Ben, Ryan says. Ben can feel everyone looking at him. He shrugs. I don't know. It's sort of a high peeping sound. He tries to imitate a peeper. Eep, eep, eep. A couple of kids laugh, but Jenny says, Oh, I've heard that noise. I heard it every night last week. Me too, someone else chimes in. So what changes the reactions of the students as Ben imitates the peeping sounds? At first, they were making fun of him, but what happened to change to where they were responding that they had heard them? Let's try it, says Mrs. Tibbetts. Let's make a peeper chorus. All the kids start making peeping noises. They're having a great time. Making noise in class is something no one ever lets them do. Mrs. Tibbetts gives them about 30 seconds, then signals for quiet. Those little frogs make that big a noise? Frankie asks. They sure do, Mrs. Tibbetts says, almost laughing. Other amphibians make even louder noises. You can hear a bunch of spadefoots from a long, long way when they're singing. What are spadefoots? Ryan asks. I'm talking about spadefoot toads, Mrs. Tibbetts explains. Their name comes from the rough shovel-like growth on their back feet. They use them like little spades to burrow into the ground. I'm going to go back for just 1 minute to the other slide. I want you to think about the theme of the text, adapting to new places and new situations. Like Ben is in a new town, he's at a new school, he's had trouble making friends. How do you think this particular scene in the story, the scene with the class and the conversation about the toads, can help Ben adjust to his new school and make new friends? I would agree. They are finding interests that are common. That is one way that helps people make friends. Let's go on. We're going to start at the second paragraph, actually at the first complete paragraph with the dialogue where Jenny is talking right here. What do they sound like? Jenny asks. Like a big flock of crows cawing, the teacher says, or some say they sound like hundreds of balloons being rubbed together. I haven't heard a noise like that, Jenny says. Well, spadefoot toads are very rare around here. In fact, they're listed as a threatened species in our state, and they only come out 1 or 2 nights a year, usually after a rainy spell in April. Mrs. Tibbetts smiles. If we get a good rain next week, there's a good chance they'll be out. So from what we've read so far, what does Mrs. Tibbetts' classroom tell you about her as a teacher and as a person? Use specific answer and evidence to support your answer. Why only 1 night? Ryan blurts out. They don't have much time, the teacher says, because they only lay their eggs in pools that dry up. Vernal pools, says Ben. Mrs. Tibbetts gives him a nod. Right, Ben. They choose temporary pools because their eggs will be safer there. There are no fish to gobble them up. But since these pools don't last long, they all have to work fast together. The males come out and sing, then the females come out and lay their eggs. The males fertilize the eggs. In 2 days, the tadpoles hatch, and within a month, they hop away as toadlets. So it's all over very quickly. Most people don't even know they're there. What happens to them then? Asks Jenny. They dig deep holes in the ground with their back feet and bury themselves in the wet earth, up to 8 feet deep. They stay there most of the time. That's why you can't find them during the rest of the year. So I wonder, guys, do you know what a spade looks like? A garden tool called a spade? It's like a shovel. Hmm. And that's on the back of their feet. Why do you think the spadefoot toads have that spade-like thing on the back of the feet based on what we just read in that paragraph? Let's go on. Second complete paragraph, still doing the dialogue. We're starting with where Ryan is talking. It would be cool to see them, Ryan says. Well, I was thinking, Mrs. Tibbets lowers her voice almost to a whisper, like she's telling a ghost story. A sly smile spreads across her face. Everyone leans a little closer. If some of you are interested, we might have a little field trip one night next week. It just so happens I have a pool on my land where the Spadefoots come to breed. Would you like that? The kids all yell their approval. So why do you think she lowered her voice? How many of you think you might come? Half the class raises their hands. Ben feels empty inside, like something belonging to him is being given away to others who don't care nearly as much as he does. He's dying to go, but he doesn't raise his hand. I've made some permission slips, and people who are interested need to take one and bring it back signed. Your parents will have to bring you to my house and pick you up afterwards. I'll have to let you know at the last minute what day it will be, though. We'll just have to watch the weather. What do you think it will be? Ryan asks. Well, they're forecasting rain for Wednesday or Thursday. Let's hope they're right. I don't think your parents will want you going on a field trip on the weekend. So why do you think Ben didn't raise his hand? Why do you think he decided he can't go even though he wants to go? Give a text evidence to support your answer. You will have to go back in the text. When Mrs. Tibbets hands out the permission slips, Ben takes one and stuffs it into his backpack. On the way back to Mrs. Kucher's class, Frankie sneers. Who wants to go in the woods with the frog lady? Erp! Not me. I do, Ben thinks, but I can't. Wait, Frankie yells. Her name isn't Mrs. Tibbets, it's Mrs. Ribbits. Ribbit, ribbit, he guffles. He's beside himself at how funny he is. Ben just glares at him. The next Monday, half of the class brings in their permission slips. The other half either can't go or doesn't want to. Ben's permission slip is still in his backpack, unsigned. There's no rain that day or the next day. It's like Massachusetts has changed almost overnight from a cold, dark, rainy, muddy place into a sunny world full of life. The skies are blue every day and the temperature rises into the 60s. On Wednesday, a few kids wear shorts to school. Is it going to be tonight? Ryan asked Mrs. Tibbets. He's asked that same question at least 24 times over the past 2 days. It doesn't look like it, the teacher says. It's got to really rain hard. Ben watches, feeling farther and farther away from everything and everybody. But what happens if it doesn't rain enough? Janice asks. The Spadefoots will wait until next year, Mrs. Tibbets says. They can wait 3 or 4 years before they lay eggs. 4 years? We'll never see them, Ryan wails. Nature takes its time, Mrs. Tibbets says. Unlike most people, nature is very patient. What do you think she was referring to, most people being impatient? We have a change in our setting again. Let's see what happens. Thursday starts out sunny, but by 9 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of reading, the skies start to darken. By the time Ben gets to Mrs. Tibbets' class, it looks like it could start raining any second. Tonight? Ryan asks. Is it tonight? Excuse me. I don't think so, Mrs. Tibbet says. Most scientists think that the Spadefoots get their message from the rain seeping into the soil, so the ground won't be soaked enough tonight. But what if it happens over the weekend? Someone asked. We'll miss it. Let's just wait and see what happens, Mrs. Tibbet says. The skies stay gray, the clouds thicken, and the air feels damp and heavy. But the rain doesn't come. Here we have another setting change. Let's see what happens. At home that night, Ben spreads out everything he has so far for his geography report. He's downloaded information off the internet and made notes on some index cards, but he can't seem to get interested. It all seems dry and boring. He's staring at the wall above his desk when he hears the phone ring. Ben, his mother calls. It's Toby. Finally, Ben thinks. He's been sending his friend emails for days and hasn't heard back. He even called a couple of times and left messages. Lizard Man, he says as he picks up the phone. Hi, Toby answers. His voice sounds uneasy. So the climax is building again. The narrator is indicating this is telling us that it's building because of Toby's voice sounding uneasy. How's Arizona?